Japan ranks third in the world for life expectancy. The average Japanese woman lives to 84.9 years. The United States ranks 45th. The gap between those two numbers is not explained by genetics alone, and researchers have known that for decades. What is harder to explain, or perhaps harder to admit, is how much of that gap lives in the smallest daily habits, the ones that happen before 8 in the morning, the ones that involve what you put in a cup. The average American woman drinks just under 2 cups of coffee a day. In Japan, the dominant morning drink has been green tea for centuries, not as a wellness trend, not as a longevity protocol, simply as what morning tastes like. This is about whether that difference matters, and what is actually happening inside the body when those 2 different mornings begin. Now, let us begin. When you wake up in the morning, your body is already in the middle of something. Between roughly 7 and 9 in the morning, your cortisol level is at its natural daily peak. Cortisol is a stress hormone, but that word makes it sound like the enemy. It is not. In the right amount, at the right time, it is the thing that wakes you up. It sharpens your attention. It gets you moving. Your body has been doing this every morning since you were born. It does not need help. When you add caffeine to that cortisol peak, when the first cup of coffee arrives on top of the body's already elevated stress response, you are not waking yourself up. You are amplifying something that was already happening, and over time, the body adapts to that amplification. The cortisol response grows larger. The adenosine receptors multiply to compensate. The day you skip the coffee, the whole system crashes in a way it never would have if you had simply let morning happen on its own terms. The women I grew up around never thought about cortisol. They did not know the word. They simply made tea. Sencha, most often. Poured into a small cup. Drunk quietly before anything else happened. Whatever was in that tea, and we will come back to this, it did not add to the body's stress load. It created something that I can only describe as a steady, gentle alertness. Not a spike, a floor. Green tea contains a compound called L-theanine. L-theanine is an amino acid that promotes what researchers describe as calm focus, a state of relaxed alertness without the anxiety edge that caffeine alone produces. It works in part because it does not suppress adenosine the way caffeine does. It does not need to be compensated for, and it does not amplify a cortisol peak that the body was already managing perfectly well on its own. Now I want to stop here and tell you something that I think explains why so many women in the West have already tried green tea, decided they hated it, and gone back to coffee, because this matters, and almost nobody talks about it. Green tea is not bitter. It should not be bitter. The green tea that was bitter, the cup you tried once in a hotel or from a bag steeped in boiling water, that was not green tea prepared correctly. It was green tea ruined by one mistake. The water was too hot. The women who taught me to make tea would never have dreamed of pouring boiling water over it. You let the kettle cool. You wait until the water is somewhere between 70 and 80 degrees Celsius. That is warm, not boiling, the kind of temperature where you could hold your hand above the steam without pulling it away. At that temperature, the L-theanine dissolves into the water cleanly. The astringent compounds that produce bitterness stay largely locked in the leaves. What you taste is something soft and slightly grassy and warm in a way that is genuinely pleasant. Boiling water does the opposite. It destroys the L-theanine. It releases everything bitter. And then the person drinking it thinks, I do not like green tea. And they are right. They do not like that cup, but that cup was not green tea, not the way it was meant to be made. It was boiling water poured over something that could not survive it. This one detail, 70 to 80 degrees, not boiling, is the reason millions of women dismissed what is arguably the most studied longevity beverage on earth. Not because it is not for them, because nobody told them the temperature. Let us move to the skin now, because this is where I see the most direct difference, and where the daily habit connects most visibly to how a woman looks at 40, 50, 60. Coffee is a mild diuretic. That means it increases the amount of water your body loses. Researchers measure this through something called transepidermal water loss, the rate at which water moves out through the skin barrier and evaporates into the air. When that rate is high, the skin barrier is weaker. When the skin barrier is weak over a long period of time, the skin loses elasticity faster, lines appear earlier, and the face begins to look dull rather than luminous. This is not dramatic. It is slow. It is the kind of change that happens over years, not overnight, and so most people do not connect it to what they drink every morning. Before I have anything else, before tea, before food, I drink a glass of warm water. This was not something I decided to do because I read about it. It was simply what everyone around me did. My mother did it. My grandmother did it. You woke up and you drank warm water first because the night was long and the body was dry, and this was the obvious and natural thing to do. Then came the tea. Green tea hydrates. It does not draw water out of the body the way coffee does. So before 9 in the morning, the skin has received hydration and then more hydration rather than a net loss of moisture. The skin barrier is being supported from inside every single morning before a single cream or serum has been applied. I am not saying this is why Japanese women's skin looks the way it does. I am saying this is one small part of a pattern that has been consistent for generations, and patterns like that are worth paying attention to. Now, I want to talk about something that costs nothing to change. I want to make it as easy as possible to begin. You do not have to give up coffee. I am not asking you to. The first cup in the morning, if that is something you love, if it is a ritual, if it is the thing that makes you feel like yourself, keep it. I am asking you to consider what happens with the second cup. There is a tea called hojicha. It is a roasted green tea. The leaves are fired over charcoal at high heat, which turns them brown and produces a flavor that is warm and toasty and slightly nutty. It is the tea that most Westerners actually enjoy on first encounter because it does not taste like what they expected. It tastes something closer to a very gentle, warm, slightly earthy version of what coffee smells like when it is at its most comforting. Hojicha contains approximately 7.7 milligrams of caffeine per cup. A standard cup of coffee contains roughly 95 milligrams. That is not a modest difference. It is a near complete removal of the caffeine load without removing the warmth, the ritual, or the flavor satisfaction. Hojicha does not spike cortisol. It does not disrupt sleep. It does not create the dependency cycle that I will describe shortly. You can stop drinking it any day you choose without any consequence whatsoever. Replace just the second cup of coffee with hojicha this week. Not all your coffee. 1 cup. The second one. And simply notice by Thursday and whether anything feels different in the afternoon, in the evening, and how easily you fall asleep that night. That is all. That is the beginning. Let us talk about sleep. Because this is where I believe the real damage accumulates, and where most women have no idea the connection exists. The half-life of caffeine in the body is approximately 5 hours, though in women over 40 it can be longer. A half-life means that after 5 hours, half the caffeine you consumed is still circulating. A cup of coffee at 3 in the afternoon still has half its caffeine active in your system at 8 in the evening. The body is trying to prepare for sleep. The caffeine is chemically preventing that preparation from completing fully. What this means in practice is not that you cannot fall asleep. Most people can fall asleep even with caffeine in their system. What changes is the quality of the sleep, specifically the depth of it. The slow, deep stages of sleep are the ones that are disrupted first and most significantly. And those deep stages are not simply about feeling rested. They are the stages during which the body releases growth hormone, the primary signal for overnight tissue repair, for skin renewal, for the quiet, invisible restoration that keeps a face looking younger than its years. When I think about the women I grew up around, women in their 60s and 70s with skin that seemed not quite to match their age, I do not think they were conscious of any of this. They were not protecting their deep sleep on purpose. They were simply not drinking anything in the evening that would have disturbed it. In Japanese summers, the cold drink in every household was mujicha, roasted barley tea, 0 caffeine, completely transparent to the body. Children drank it. Elderly people drank it. You poured it from a glass bottle in the refrigerator, and it tasted clean and faintly toasted, and it asked nothing of your nervous system at all. By evening, it had cleared the body completely. Sleep arrived the way sleep was supposed to arrive. And every night, without anyone thinking about it, the body had the conditions it needed to do its repair work. Now I want to say something that I have hesitated over, because I do not want it to sound like I am telling you the world is against you. I do not believe that, but I do think the numbers are worth sitting with for a moment. The global coffee market in 2024 is valued at over $120 billion US. That industry depends on daily consumption, on habit, on the sense that you cannot begin the day without it. Separately, the sleep aid industry has grown into tens of billions of dollars, products designed to address a problem that very often begins with what people drank earlier in the day. The anti-aging skincare industry is larger still. These are industries that do not overlap in their marketing, but they grow together. They depend on each other in ways that no one states plainly. There is no financial incentive for anyone to tell you that switching 1 cup of coffee for a cup of hojicha might quietly improve your sleep quality, and that better sleep might quietly improve how your skin looks over time. There is nothing to sell in that chain of events. The tea costs almost nothing. The benefit is gradual and free. It does not require a subscription. I am not angry about this. It simply explains why certain things are never the loudest voice in the room. Let us talk about blood sugar, because this is the piece that affects body weight, not through a diet, not through calorie counting, but through something that happens in the bloodstream every morning before breakfast. Black coffee, even without sugar, raises blood glucose. It does this by triggering cortisol and adrenaline, which signal the liver to release stored glucose. In younger women, the body handles this quickly, but in women moving through perimenopause and menopause, insulin sensitivity often shifts. The body does not manage that glucose response as efficiently as it once did. The resulting insulin spike directs the body toward fat storage, and that storage happens preferentially in the abdomen, the precise place where most women in this age group notice the most change. Matcha, a form of green tea made from finely ground whole leaves, contains a compound called EGCG that has been studied in multiple research contexts for its effect on insulin sensitivity and fasting blood glucose. The research is not yet settled, and I want to be careful not to overstate it. But across a number of studies, regular matcha consumption has been associated with improvements in those markers over time. My mother was not managing her insulin sensitivity. She did not know what EGCG was. She made matcha in the morning with a small bamboo whisk, the way her mother had shown her, because that was what morning tasted like. Whatever protection that offered her was entirely accidental. And yet she was slim at 70 in a way that had nothing to do with willpower or restriction. She simply ate and drank in a pattern that never worked against her body's signals. And now the last piece, the one that I think matters most for how a woman feels day to day, not just in the long term. Coffee suppresses a chemical in the brain called adenosine. Adenosine builds up throughout the day and is what makes you feel tired as evening arrives. Caffeine works by blocking adenosine receptors, parking in those spaces so the adenosine cannot land. The fatigue does not go away. It simply cannot signal. And the brain, in response, creates more receptors over time so that eventually you need more caffeine just to feel what you used to feel with less. The day you skip coffee, every one of those extra receptors is suddenly available. The adenosine floods them all at once. That is the headache. That is the brain fog. That is the experience that causes most people to conclude they need coffee to function. They do not need coffee. They need coffee because they drink coffee. The dependency is real, but it is manufactured. Not by character flaw, but by neurobiology doing exactly what it was designed to do. Hojicha, at under 8 milligrams of caffeine per cup, does not create this cycle. Mujicha, with 0 caffeine, does not create this cycle. You can drink either of them every day for a year and stop tomorrow with no consequence. No headache, no fog. Just a day without tea. The women I grew up around were not heroic about this. They were not stoic tea drinkers who had conquered a craving. They had simply never created the craving. They enjoyed their morning drink the way you enjoy something that has never made demands of you, freely, quietly, without noticing that the freedom itself was the point. Everything I have described today, the cortisol, the hydration, the sleep, the blood sugar, the dependency, all of it begins in the same place. The first hour of the morning. What you drink, what you eat, whether you sit or rush, whether you look at a screen or sit with something warm in your hands while the day arrives slowly. Japanese women's morning is not a routine someone designed. It is not a wellness protocol. It is a sequence of conditions that existed before any of us were born and that we simply were born inside of. Warm water first, then tea made at the right temperature, a small breakfast eaten at a table, without hurry. No screen for the first little while, because the day had not fully started yet, and there was no rush to begin. The next video I want to share with you covers exactly that first hour, what it looks like, how it was structured for generations, and why adjusting just the first 20 minutes of your morning produces the kind of quiet cumulative results that no supplement has ever been able to replicate, because the supplement is trying to imitate the condition. The condition is free. If something in what I shared today made you pause, if you found yourself thinking about your second cup of coffee, or about the temperature of your water, or about a night's sleep you have not had in longer than you can remember, then please subscribe. There's much more to share. The habits are simple, they are old, they are free, and most of them you can begin tonight.